So hello, everyone. My name is Aoife Garvin, and I'm Inbound Marketing Manager for our LinkedIn Marketing Solutions. Thanks, everyone, so much for taking the time to join us today. It's great to see so many of our customers on the call this morning. So before we begin and I hand you over to our host for today, I'd like to mention some quick housekeeping tips. So after today's session, we will be sending out a follow-up email to everyone with a link to today's recording and also a copy of our slides. So please feel free to share these with your colleagues. Also, I would like to mention that if you have any questions during this session today, please do feel free to pop them into our chat function, and we will do our best to get to them in the Q&A after the session. So I guess without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to my colleagues, Radha Moniva and Claire Clinton.
Apologies for dropping off the call here. Thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Radha, and I'll kick off the webinar here. We are delighted to have you all as our guests for this LinkedIn Leads Generation webinar. Today, we would like to talk about best practices of driving leads and optimizing campaigns for leads. In terms of the agenda today, we are going to briefly touch on what it's like to live in a world of lead generation in 2016. We are then going to share some of our steps to success that are going to help you in any lead gen campaign. And I will then pass you over to Claire, who will go through our lead gen products, sponsored updates, and sponsored InMail in detail later on. All of you here are marketers who live in a world governed by leads, conversions, and direct response. It is your job to create and nurture measurable, actionable interest in your brand, product, or service, all the while lowering your cost per lead and increasing your company's return on investment across multiple channels. It is a big role, and we wanted to bring some tips that could be helpful. With that in mind, first off this morning, we wanted to share some highlights from our research, Rethink the B2B Buyer's Journey. So this is a research that we conducted in late 2015, and in that we surveyed over 6,000 B2B buyers, marketers, and salespeople at mid-sized enterprise companies around the globe. In terms of industries, we received respondents from over 22% from tech industry, around 22% from the financial services, 14% from services, and 14% from manufacturing. And in terms of seniority, 9 out of every 10 respondents had a seniority of manager level or above. This is one of the few researches that gives you a 360-degree holistic view of the buyer's journey. We will be discussing some of the findings of this research and the 4 key takeaways we think will be useful for you in the next few slides. And Aoife is also going to follow up with our blog post where you can follow and you can find that research for yourselves and read it through in detail later on if you would like to. We all know that today's buyer's journey is complex and continues to evolve. Over recent years, the 3 key drivers in change of the B2B buyer's journey have been, and we believe will continue to be so, social media, mobile, and technology. And not surprisingly, LinkedIn is at the intersection of all of these. So let's just take a moment to quickly review the impact of each of these. In terms of mobile, we now know that in some countries, mobile traffic is surpassing desktop site visits. This is a clear statement of direction. Here at LinkedIn, we now have over 414 million members with over 57% of traffic coming from mobile devices as well. This means that websites should not only be mobile optimized for viewing, but factors such as readability, responsive design, and not using non-mobile friendly software such as Flash will also be taken into consideration in a website search ranking. In terms of technology, the growth of marketing automation, data management, and CRM platforms are now giving marketers 360-degree viewpoints of their consumers. We expect to see a continued trend in marketers investing in this type of technology to boost their multi-channel nurturing efforts such as email, display, and social advertising, measure return on investment as part of driving buyers down the buying funnel, and also acquiring leads. Finally, and most importantly, social media has changed the way that B2B buyers find, consume, and share among their peers and internal networks content and information from brands and marketers. We all know that content is king, and as you can see on this slide, our research found that only social media and information sharing across the buyer's organization figured in the top 3 content resources in each of the 5 stages of the path to purchase: awareness, scope, plan, select, and implement or buy. This trend is only expected to rise over time. When we say info sharing organization, I just wanted to mention here that what we mean by this is how decision makers will consult with their peers and colleagues both inside and outside of their companies to gather information about the products and services they are considering, and we're also going to touch base on this later on in this presentation. However, for all the time we spend developing a strong funnel, we know that it can also end up being a leaky funnel at times, particularly in this digital age. We know that around 40% of ads reach the wrong people, and we want to minimize wastage as much as possible. We know that 90% of the buyer's journey is complete before reaching out. That means that 90% buyers are 90% through the funnel before they fill out a form or reach out to a sales rep. We believe that they can reach out to us much earlier in their journey. More than 60% of content goes unread. We spend a lot of time working on content, and it's a shame to see so much of it not being read. 98% of website visitors will not convert. We often talk about conversion rates of 2%, 5%, but the reality is the majority of website visitors will still not convert, and we believe there is an opportunity there to shift that. Similarly to that, 80% of emails go unopened. And finally, 95% of all MQLs will not convert. Think about it. That is basically like people walking out the front of your store straight after they have walked in. The good news is that new channels and new buying funnels are resulting in lots of great new opportunities that can help us do better. With that in mind, we will give you our 4 steps to success that you can implement in any of your lead gen campaigns. First of all, it's important to understand that the buying decision is a team effort. As we saw from earlier slides, information sharing across the organization between peers and colleagues occurs at every single stage of the buying funnel. Think about yourself in your company. Are you able to say you have absolute decision-making approval without intercompany information sharing and collaboration to individually make a serious buying decision for a new product or service on behalf of the company? I imagine that's a very small people here. That is why it is important to understand your audience and who is involved in the decision buying process so that you can target them accordingly. For example, we know that IT, finance, business development, and administration are just some of the departments that are usually included in the buying process. Second of all, it's important to know that different content is required for different stages of the funnel. And what we mean by this is that most top funnel content at the awareness stage should not be gated in order to promote engagement and to increase your brand awareness. At the consideration level or the evaluation stage, give away for free as much of this content as you can. And when you come to the purchase stage, to the final gated stage, give as much teaser information as possible so that your audience knows they will get some value in exchange for their data. It's also important to remember that it can take around 7 to 10 pieces of content for someone to read, let alone interact with the content. So that is why we recommend having 2 to 4 pieces of content for every single stage. I suppose what's important to take from this slide is that you need to have a very strong top of funnel in order to generate leads, and Claire is going to touch base on this later on today. It's also important to remember that professionals consume content around the clock in different environments, so you should have an always-on strategy. As we also consume content on different devices, it is also important that content is mobile optimized, and we will also touch base on this later on today. To follow up on this, it's important to not put hurdles at the final fence. So once you have a potential buyer on your site, don't let them drop off. Make sure that they stay on the landing page and take the actions you want them to take. We recommend that your creative should lead directly to a landing page with a lead form that is above the fold. We also recommend not including any other links to other pages on the site, keeping the user on the page. And that also the lead form itself should be less than 10 fields, ideally between 5 to 7. We recommend, as mentioned before, adding a full table of contents below the fold or any teaser information which might help the user to understand what the paper will include. In terms of call to actions, we recommend to avoid using verbs such as submit and instead use verbs such as access, download, and Claire is going to give you a few more examples of these later on today as well. And finally, it's also important to define success, lead goals, and metrics across different departments and externally across your publisher. This will allow for aligned strategy and clear KPIs. This will also help you account for leads successfully. Think about it. If you have a webinar, what constitutes as a lead? Is it, for example, attendance at the webinar or an application to join the webinar? Define what success looks like for the marketing, sales, finance department so that you are speaking a common language and you're all aligned. It's also important to remember that clicks and impressions don't mean anything to a sales director, for example, so it's important that they understand your work. To recap, we think that these tips will help you to reach the entire buying team with smart targeting, to give the buyers what they want in terms of content, and to create seamless experiences across multiple devices and platforms. And finally, to align metrics and terminology so that your campaigns are successful.
Thank you, Rada. So, morning everybody, my name is Claire and I'm an account manager here at LinkedIn. And today I wanted to bring you through why we believe LinkedIn is the platform where you can gain valuable success in your lead generation goals. So as Rada mentioned, the buying process is a team sport, and we have evidence to show that social media usage is very high at every stage of the buying process. So why not use the world's leading B2B professional audience and attract the 414 million members that we have online? So 2 key takeaways I want you to take away today from why LinkedIn is so powerful for this lead generation goal is that we have powerful targeting based on first-party data. So we can reach these key decision makers at every stage of the buying process. Take Nico Lutkins here, for example, our Senior Director for Marketing Solutions in marketing. If we were to target her or a company here online today would like to target her, we can do that in a variety of ways by targeting her through her function, job titles, the company she works in, and the geo that she's located in. So we have really powerful data based on this first-party data on all of the members that we have. And secondly, what's really key and what we're seeing in LinkedIn at the moment is that, yes, we're excellent at being a job platform, but also the shift is starting to change and more people are coming onto LinkedIn as the go-to source for consuming professional content. So if we look and compare ourselves to other social media platforms in the landscape today, we are top of mind at every stage of the buying process in terms of lead generation because people are coming online to make themselves more productive and successful in their day-to-day. So as an account manager here in LinkedIn, my role is to set the campaigns up for success once we launch. So today I wanted to bring you through a deep dive of 2 key products that we have in LinkedIn, sponsored updates and sponsored InMail, and to give you some top tips and tricks to get more leads from these solutions that we can offer. So firstly, we're going to talk about sponsored updates, which are our fastest growing business line here in LinkedIn. It is a way to deliver relevant, personalized content to your audience's newsfeed. It's something that is available on all devices, so tablet, mobile, and desktop. And as Rada mentioned earlier, this is key to success in any lead generation activity. So it's a way of going beyond your company followers and the organic people who have chosen to follow your brand, but it's a way of targeting them with relevant, apt content to them to target these key decision makers at every stage of the buying process. So today I wanted to go through the top tips that I share with my clients for effective lead generation through sponsored updates. Some of them a lot of people on the call will know a lot about, but I wanted to kind of go back to basics and give some tips that will set you up for success in your lead generation journey. So first of all, tip one is all about the Campaign Manager tool and getting to know the ins and outs and the intricacies and what's possible on this. We recently launched a new Campaign Manager back in September last year, and every time we start a campaign with any client, we really recommend them to get to know the Campaign Manager tool really, really well. This is essentially the back end of all the sponsored updates activity and where you can post and align your metrics accordingly. So first of all, understand who your target audience are and are you reaching them effectively. So as Radha mentioned, the buying process involves lots of stakeholders. So are you reaching all of these stakeholders and are you reaching these key decision makers effectively? As we mentioned earlier with Nico and the first party data that we have on each individual member, start looking at ways of targeting maybe by something that's not as obvious as job function or the company that they work in. We recommend for effective targeting on LinkedIn sponsored updates to have an audience size of between 100 and 300,000 members based on our mantra of going broad or going home. By starting out broad, we get to understand what your audience is interacting with, and then we can optimize accordingly, which I'll touch on later on, to effectively nurture those key leads and people who are really interested in your brand. Also, it's important to understand how you can get ahead of your competitors. LinkedIn and sponsored updates is a highly competitive product, and based on the auction model that we have, when you select an audience that you're looking to target and create these campaigns to reach these buying decision makers, the higher the bid range that is selected essentially means that the competition is very high on the site. So if you see and you feel like you're paying a lot for that audience, it's a way of going back to the targeting and how can you effectively target this audience in maybe another way by looking at different facets that we have available. Also, it's important to understand is the pricing model that you're using aligned to your lead gen objective. Traditionally, we would suggest a CPM model or cost per meal impression is a branding pricing model, and for lead generation to effectively occur, we suggest to go for a CPC or cost per click model. So make sure that you have that understanding and that you're correctly aligned. And finally, do you have enough budget allocated per day? So when we get a contract and a campaign live, there is key times when more budget is needed over others for lead generation to occur. This could be around an event or a webinar, so make sure that you have enough budget allocated and you are absolutely maximizing your lead generation throughout the course of your campaign. Following on for this, it's really important, and I can't stress this enough with all of our clients, is to be always on. And to do that, you need to get organized and develop a content calendar. A content calendar is a really effective way to plan ahead these key lead generation times when you need to maximize ROI. So if you have a webinar, for example, in 3 weeks' time, start generating the content now and don't leave it 2 days before the webinar occurs to start sponsoring to these target audiences that you wish to attract to it. It's important as well that you're aligned internally and that other departments know as well what content is going to be available to them so that wastage and time is maximized. So now we know we've got the basics right. It's key to understand as well what content works and what content resonates on LinkedIn. So the examples that I'm showing today are actually top pieces of content that were generated in Q4 of 2015. So as you can see, they're short, concise intros. Looking for a good compliance officer, so is everybody else. So we don't need to select more. They're asking a question which is really relevant, and they're calling out the audience that it's relevant to. So compliance officers, it automatically attracts your attention and elicits a really high engagement rate. Also the use of rich media like infographics, videos, everything like that it will elicit a click or somebody to be more intrigued and click further. It generates a really high engagement on LinkedIn, and it's really good to start looking at what's available to you and can you start sponsoring. Strong call to actions, and we'll touch later on this, on key call to actions for lead generation, but this is really important to make sure that the audience sees what they get. So if it's a webinar, make sure that you use strong call to actions for it. Bold images like Merrill Lynch have used on the work-life balance top post that they generated last quarter is something that's unrelated to Merrill Lynch, essentially. It's not something that you'd associate with them, but the use of that image on LinkedIn elicited a really high engagement rate, and it was something that got Merrill Lynch front of mind in those people's buyers in the buying process. Also, interviews work really well, both internally and externally. So if you have maybe a case study and you have a client that wants to, collaborate and show how your brand has helped them be productive and successful, try and get an interview out of them, or also get an interview from somebody internally and start humanizing your brand. And if you can, get creative. Start looking at what's available to you and how can you repurpose it. And we'll dwell further on that in the few tips. So now we know what content works, but what content now will work for driving your lead generation through content? So my recommendation to clients is always a 4-1-1 strategy. What does this mean? Essentially, 4 means 4 pieces of content which speak directly to what members want to read about, genuinely helpful, making them more productive and successful. So this is all about the branding piece that Radha mentioned, which is key in driving top-of-funnel leads for your brand. So Jack Welch Management Institute have used rich media to attract attention. They're giving useful advice on the top tips that you need to know to grow your career. The use of Jack Welch himself on the video humanizes the brand, which is really important for gaining trust. And the intro copy is short, so it's fewer than 150 characters and includes a link. So this type of content is really key in the eyeballs, as Radha mentioned. So consuming 7 to 10 pieces of content like this, along with the second piece of our strategy on using that type of content but syndicating it from another publisher. So if you can talk about something in the New York Times that's related to your brand, or something else that will make them productive and successful. So Visa here are showing you the top words you should never use on your LinkedIn profile. Something unrelated to Visa, but the use of these tips and syndicated with another publisher has given them a credible branding piece that is key to the lead generation focus. And then finally, the last part of the 4-1-1 strategy is all about your lead generation. So it's one piece of content that's speaking directly about the brand's own offering. So this piece of content should be gated. It should be a way where you're able to attract these leads, and you need to make it engaging. So Jabra here have a very simple and effective call to action. So are you working in a noisy office? Short and sweet, and the call to action is try the new Jabra Evolve headset. So very, very simple, and I wanted to highlight this piece of content because it has been live for a number of months, meaning that when you do create this lead generation content, you can have it live and on your sponsored updates account for as long as possible, as long as it's continuing to drive leads for you. But only the lead generation will occur in this 4-1-1 strategy if you make sure that your top of funnel is still top of mind by gaining that trust. So when the lead generation piece comes, that people will be inclined to click and leave their details. So when you are doing the lead gen approach, what call to action should you use? So as I mentioned earlier, it should be clear and it should be simple, and the audience should know what they're looking for. So the top key call to actions that we have on LinkedIn at the moment are strong call to actions like apply, stop by, download, read, register. So for example, if we look at the two examples that we have here, very clear, we know that you want to meet us at the GITEX Technology Week 2015, book a meeting with us. We want you to download our global HR trends and surveys. So make sure that when you are doing the call to action piece that it's very clear. Tip 6 is all about the content as well that you're using. So when I start off with a LinkedIn campaign with a client, one of the questions that we always ask is, what content have you got coming down the line? And very often people and brands don't feel like that they have enough content readily available to them. So I wanted to highlight this as, remember, that content that you have that maybe was used last year may be old to you, but it's relevant to your new target audience. This is the first time that that audience has seen this piece of content. So if it's relevant, why not share it and repurpose it? Don't start looking for budget to go to a creative agency when you have a lot of assets there. So if we take the Sophisticated Marketeer's Guide to LinkedIn, which we published here internally in 2015, we can repurpose that content for every stage of the 411 strategy by sending infographics, slide shares, creating webinars, podcasts, and blog posts, all from that simple book. So it's start to look at what you have readily available to you and how can you repurpose that in a way that will effectively reach that target audience using the 411 strategy. So when you have the content live and you have your target audience created and your campaigns created, we recommend using direct sponsored content or A/B testing variations of content to understand what works to your different audiences. So somebody in the C-suite audience in IT will look at posts and some posts will resonate with them more than, say, a senior marketing director. So it's important to A/B test and to see what works. This here will optimize towards the best performing updates, so it eliminates wastage. You can turn off the lower performing updates, and similarly, you can let those that are performing well serve more impressions. This will overall improve the campaign return of investment, and you will also get to learn a lot more about your target audience, and this is key for any lead generation to successfully occur. Tip 8 is, once you have your campaigns live and you're starting to see results, it's important to optimize frequently. So what I mean by this is going into your campaign manager tool and leveraging the click demographics that you see to tweak the audiences. So it goes back to, I suppose, the first tips of getting the foundations right and going broad or going home. So by creating a large segment of the audience, you can drill down and see, actually, you know what, these top people are clicking in that function. I'm going to remove those that aren't engaging as much. Similarly, it's important to turn off content that is underperforming. At LinkedIn, we have benchmarks internally of 0.25 to 0.35% click-through rate. So we would always recommend to turn off anything that is below benchmark, and similarly anything that's underperforming and not generating leads for you. It's wasted if it's there and it's serving impressions when there's actually no transactions occurring on your side. Also as well, the campaign and the platforms are highly competitive. So although we suggest a bid range at the start of the campaign, it's important to go back in quite regularly and ensure that your bids are winning the auction and are serving more impressions to that target audience. So this may mean tweaking the bids higher to beat your competitors, or coming down a little bit more so that you can eventually reduce your cost per click. And also, it's important to move our ad budget to better performing campaigns when lead generation is important. So this goes back as well to the content calendar. If you have a webinar next week and it's driving a lot of leads for you, it may be looking at, can you add more budget to that, or can you shift around budget on current campaigns for optimum lead generation to occur? The Campaign Manager tool is very flexible, and this is very, very easy to do, but is not maximized enough. So second last tip is about thinking about when you post. We get a lot of questions internally from clients wondering, can we turn off the campaign now after 6 o'clock because nobody's on LinkedIn because they're not working anymore? Or can we turn it off over the weekend? But this is something that we strongly don't recommend. It's not key for the lead generation to occur. So as you can see, the usage on different platforms and devices changes throughout the day, and as sponsored updates is on all of these devices, we definitely see a high click-through rate when the professionals are in their day-to-day or, you know, are on the train like Radha mentioned earlier. So it's important to have that always-on approach and not to turn off anything at night or at the weekend. And finally, I can't stress this enough as well, is it's patience. These tips are there for you to get the best out of your lead generation to occur, but it's not going to happen overnight. Lots of optimizations are needed. It's really important to understand your audience. It's really important to understand what content is working for your audience. And there is always going to be a ramp-up time. So whether or not you've invested 10K or 100K on LinkedIn, it's important to make sure that you have these foundational tips, setting yourself up for success, and then the leads will start to flow. It's really important as well that you collaborate with your account management team in LinkedIn and communicate to them the leads that are being generated and the quality of them. And then we can go back and revisit, are we looking at the targeting right, and give you these tips again for maximum lead generation to occur. So there is going to be a ramp-up time, so please be patient, but we guarantee that if you get these tips up for success and you set yourself up, that the leads will come. So the second product that I want to talk about today is sponsored InMail. And sponsored InMail is a way, and is the most direct way to engage with your prospects on LinkedIn. We recommend InMail to drive tangible direct response metrics, which goes back to point 4 that Radha mentioned. So leads, the cost per lead, pipeline, and driving high consideration brand awareness. Sponsored InMails guarantee 100% deliverability in real time to your target audience. And it's a coveted product as you only receive one InMail every 60 days. So there's a high engagement rate, and at the moment it's beating any other email marketing that's out there. Currently we are seeing open rates of 30 to 40%, which are our benchmarks. But if you take the tips and tricks that I'm going to show you now today, we have seen a lot more open rates, up on 70% in certain instances, with a very high click-through rate on open. So like I did in sponsored updates, I want to go through the top tips that I recommend to all my clients for effective lead generation through sponsored InMail. First of all, first impressions matter. So somebody on LinkedIn is only going to receive one of these every 60 days, if that. So you need to make sure that you get your first impressions right and that you're making it count. So think about, who is the InMail coming from? This really depends on the actual body and what you're looking to, what your lead generation focus is, but is it coming from a company or is it coming from an individual member within that company? There's no right or wrong answer, it's a test. At the moment we're seeing a lot of high engagement coming from individual members, so a senior individual within the organization, but it really depends on what your messaging is about and what your lead generation goal is. So once you have potentially grabbed your attention with the sender, you need to make sure that there is a short, impactful subject line that will elicit an open. And then subsequently on that, if that fails, you can add a little bit more detail to the subject line, but it's these 3 points that will make or break your open rates. And if you get them right, we will start to see a really high open rate. As well, the body matters. So when we actually have an opened InMail, we tend to see that lots of people are interested in the brand and the person that the InMail is coming from, but there's a much lower click-through on open than we would like to see. So tips to increase that click-through rate and engage more lead generation is keeping the body short and concise. Keep it under 1,000 characters, excuse me. Avoid using or adding hyperlinks to the text, and keep it simple. 3 bullet points with limited formatting is optimum. An eye-catching banner as well on the right-hand side will also attract attention and will also be linked to the call to action. So make it eye-catching, but also make the text simple and make sure that your lead generation objective is all aligned. I wanted to focus as well on the body and the simplicity. So more call to actions in the InMail do not equal more conversations. Keep your lead generation top of mind and make sure that your call to action is clear. It can work against your campaign if you have too much hyperlinks included, and we strongly advise against that. As well, as Rada mentioned, in traditional email or in traditional lead generation as well, we want to focus on what call to actions work for sponsored InMail. So make sure that it's relevant to the offering that's there. So try, register, reserve, join, confirm, download. These are the top call to actions that we're seeing currently on LinkedIn, and we recommend using them for future. Tip 5 is all about mobile. As 57% of our traffic on LinkedIn is at the moment mobile, we recommend that making sure that you have a clear call to action and clear body, because mobile really drives leads. And this is really key, as at the bottom on mobile there is a sticky button, which means that the call to action is always top of mind. So at the moment, mobile is driving leads for sponsored InMail, so ensure that your text and your body is simple and that you're making the right impression, because this is where we're seeing the highest engagement, much more over desktop at the moment. So tip 6 is the final tip that I want to go through when using sponsored InMail, and it's all around events. If you have an event coming up, we strongly recommend using sponsored InMail because it's a really key way for driving further leads. So I want to highlight our case study that's available also on our LinkedIn blog. So it's of Globo, who were attending the Mobile World Congress in Barcelona last year. So they came to us and they were wanting to drive more people to visit them on their stand and subsequent engage in further meetings with them, these key decision makers that they were looking to target. So why did it work for them? Well, they used sponsored InMail, and by using that, they had a 69% increase in the number of meetings that they had on the previous year. So their sponsored InMail was strong. They had a strong visual that supported the message and the call to action, but it didn't distract. They had an attention-grabbing subject line supporting the description with a clear call to action. So, meet Globo at the Mobile World Congress 2015. Very, very simple, and the location that they're going to be. The text was uncluttered, but also, and this goes back to my point as well on the targeting that LinkedIn has. They used a clear and intuitive targeting that resonated really, really well for their target audience. What Globo did was they targeted all of their InMails to those members who participate in the Mobile World Congress group on LinkedIn. So by doing this, they presumed that the majority of people that were in this group on LinkedIn were actually going to be at the Mobile World Congress. And by doing that and by thinking of it and having a clear strategy, they were able to drive up on 75% open rates and also up on 20% click-through on opens. So really, really high engagements because of their clever and intuitive targeting. So I'd strongly recommend, if you're interested in using sponsored InMail for events, to talk to your account management team on LinkedIn, and they will best be able to advise you on the strategy to take and if we have any intuitive targeting to work on together. So that's it from me on sponsored updates and sponsored InMail. I want to pass over to Radha now to talk about what we can look forward to on LinkedIn going forward.
Thank you, Claire. I hope you all found these tips very useful. And now we wanted to give you a little sneak peek of what is coming in LinkedIn later this year. So I'm really happy to say that we will finally be rolling out conversion tracking for sponsored updates. I know this has been a feature requested by many of you multiple times. And conversion tracking is going to allow you to track and monitor performance tied to sponsored updates directly in the Campaign Manager platform. It will help you understand your return on investment, and you will also be able to optimize leveraging your conversion data, content, and targeting straight on the platform. Now, we do not have all the details of release yet, but your account management team will be in touch with you as soon as we have more information available. And finally, I'm going to pass you over to Claire again, who is going to quickly recap what we spoke about today.
Yeah, so thank you, Radha. So there's lots of exciting things on the roadmap for 2016, and as Radha mentioned, please do reach out to your account management team for these. So to recap on lead generation on a whole, we all need to go back to the drawing board and rethink our lead generation approach. So are we reaching the entire buying team? Are we giving the buyers what they want? Are we creating seamless experiences for them? And are we aligned both internally and externally on our lead generation metrics, terminology, and goals? Once you have these 4 lead generation key tips in place, your lead generation will start to occur more effectively. And we hope that, you know, LinkedIn is always top of mind for this. So we wanted to thank you for joining us today, and also if you have any further questions, please do drop them into the chat. We have approximately 10 minutes left, and Aoife will happily ask Radha and I on anything that we covered today or any of the roadmap going forward. So thank you.
Hi, Claire and Radha. Thank you so much for that. That was all really helpful. Great to see lots of really practical tips. Great to see so many practical tips there today. So we do have a few questions coming in through the Q&A and chat functions, and thanks, guys, for sending all your questions through. Hi, Claire and Radha. Thanks so much for talking us through all of that today. I saw a lot of, really practical examples of things, which is really great. It really helps bring it to life. So thanks also to everyone who has posted some questions. I did try to get through as many as I could, but we do also have some that, if everyone has some time still, we can run through now. So we do have a question here. Someone has a question. They're saying that they're seeing leads coming in, but they say that they're not hugely relevant.
Okay, so if that's something that we at LinkedIn encourage more collaboration. So when we have a report that we give as an account manager, I can only communicate on clicks, impressions, etc. So if you're not seeing the leads, or if metrics are good and I'm communicating that, and you're seeing a high number of leads, but the leads are not relevant to you, that means that we need to go back to the setting your campaign up for success and reviewing the targeting that we're looking at. So please do let us know if this is happening, and we can collaborate together by looking at more ways of targeting the real leads that you're looking to generate.
Okay, great. Thanks, Claire. I have another question here in relation to account-based marketing. So do we have any developments in terms of ABM?
Yes, so we do actually, and that's another exciting feature that is coming soon. So we can confirm that we would soon be able to target companies based on a companies list, and we'll be able to target from 500 to 30,000 companies at the same time. which is amazing because you can use HubSpot or whoever you're using to kind of get that list in Excel and send it over to us. And that's going to be rolled out to sponsored InMail and sponsored updates assisted initially, and your account management team would also be in touch whenever that is available.
Okay, great. We have a question from someone. They're asking about how the LinkedIn auction house works for sponsored updates.
Yes, so the way that our auction works, it's actually a combination of the bids. So it's 50% based on your bids and 50% based on your relevancy score. And your relevancy score is based on your content. So the more people engage and interact in terms of clicking and sharing, the higher relevancy score you would have. So that is why we recommend that, especially at the beginning of a campaign, when it's quite new and it has very few impressions and very few clicks, you should have your bids really high so that you're hitting, you're getting the most out of your auction. So just to recap, it is actually based 50% on the bid that you're putting and 50% of your relevancy score.
Okay, great. And I am conscious of time, so final question for today is with regards to the campaign manager. Someone is looking to know, should this be checked daily?
Yeah, so if you have a premium solution account with LinkedIn, be aware that your account management team will be checking it daily. However, we do strongly recommend that you also go in and understand the metrics that you're getting, but also that setting the campaigns up for success. So as we mentioned earlier, there's high competition on the platform, so it's really important to make sure that your bids are, as Rada mentioned, at the high end to win the auction and serve more impressions to your audience, and this can change daily. So absolutely. As well, if you're not hitting your daily caps that you have in place or you're not pacing correctly, you can simply adjust them on the campaign manager tool. So we would highly recommend to go in daily and check this out.
Okay, great. Thanks, Claire. Thanks, Rada. And, of course, thanks everyone who took the time to join us today. I just want to recap on what I began at the start of the session. We will be sending out a follow-up email to everyone who took the time to attend. In this email, there will be a link to today's recording. We'll also have a copy of our slides to share with you. And as Rada mentioned, we will include a link to our blog where you can download our B2B buyers research. So once again, thank you very much. If there were any questions that went unanswered, we will be able to see that, and Claire and Rada will be able to pick that up with you guys individually. Thanks again. Bye-bye.